All right, guys, welcome to the Stock Market Starters YouTube channel. And for this week's interesting trade of the week, I want to look at one that we did here this week. And we actually got two entries. It brought up some really interesting things. So let me share my screen and let's dive on into what's going on here. So, interesting trade of the week. We are looking this week at Triple M, and you can see some very interesting things are happening here. First, right, we were in a really nice uptrend, right? Uptrending nicely. We got into this one actually last week with two shares right back here, right? You can see $100.14. And it was looking pretty good here. Nice breakout. The S&P moved down a little bit. This moved down a little bit. Not a big deal. Stayed well within our trend. Popped right back up. And then this day was very interesting. So this was the day that we did the CPI, or we had the CPI report that made the market jump up on the open. And then there was a Fed announcement where the market dropped back a little bit during the day. And the CPI was pre-market, so there was a gap up before the market opened. And then later on in the day, there was the Fed announcement coming. So this was an interesting day, right? So I was in the trade. Let me come into here. So I was in the trade in here. At one point, this was looking very, very positive, sitting up here. And I changed my automatic stop loss order from being, I think it was down here, right in here, right below these bodies, right, maybe right below these wicks. And I changed my stop loss and I put it right up below this body, right basically where the stock closed as it was moving up. And the reason was with the Fed announcement coming out later in the day, I wanted to make sure that if the Fed came out negative and the market dropped, I would still hold my profits at least a little bit. So, Fed announcements can be very, very big news items. They can definitely move the market a lot. And I thought, you know what, let me protect my profits a little bit. So I did that, ended up getting called out of there with just a very, very small exit and a little bit of profit on it. So that was kind of cool. And then, the next day it was flat. And I was like, man, this just isn't, it's not really dropping, right? I've been protected from the big news announcement, but now it's not really dropping. So then this morning, the market was set to open around the 5-day on the S&P 500. I'll show you that here in a minute. And this opened down right around the 10-day and basically immediately started moving up and looked like it was going to move up really well. The S&P was looking very positive as well. So I went ahead and bought back in. And my thought here was, I've gotten already an entry and an exit this week. I protected myself from any risk, took a little bit of profits on it. So I made a little bit of money here. And I can set up a new trade where I can set up my, automatic profit line, automatic stop loss, not a big deal. So I got into it again, which normally I kind of avoid, getting out of a trade and getting into one. But the truth is, solid uptrend. We're holding EMAs. I've got a nice stop loss line right down here below this wick from the few days ago. It's right below the trend line, below the 20 days. So it's got some room to move. Now, since I got in this morning, it's dropped a little bit. And it very well may come in and hit my stop loss. If so, not a big deal, right? It'll get me out. But what's interesting is that, well, two things. First, this started moving down, right? It moved up immediately in the morning, started moving down. Now it's coming up a little bit off that low, but right, started moving down since the open this morning. What's interesting is the S&P did something very similar. So it actually opened up and moved down pretty much right off the bat. But let me switch over here to a minute chart. So this is a 1 minute chart. So it shows what happened. Here's the start of today on each minute. So it dropped down really quick and then basically ran up for a while. And this is right around when Triple M was starting to move up, right through here and all the way in here. Triple M was moving up really well. And, the S&P, it's like, hey, man, that's starting to move up. So decent spot for an entry. And then the S&P started dropping, came back a little, started dropping. Now it's come back a little. So we'll see, right? I mean, maybe we'll get a little downtrend here on the minute chart. Who knows? But what's interesting is that, now the S&P's coming up a little bit. It's right around that 5-day, right next to yesterday's low, from which it pulled back pretty substantially. So, right, we may or may not actually get another move up from here. Triple M, wow, where'd it go? Triple M very well may go back up if the S&P wants to make another run up as well. So we could come up here and then continue on. It's a really nice uptrend, honestly. Good look here. So I'm not too worried about having gotten back in, but it did highlight something interesting. In that I normally don't take a trade and then get into take a trade, get a little profit on it, sure, and then just get right back into it. That's not normally how I trade. But what's interesting, and it made me realize, I've set up my course and I've got all this super cool trading stuff in there. And I talk a lot about how you have to have a good trading plan, and how that makes a huge difference and how that tremendously changed my personal trading. But I realized this morning, like, wow, I missed something. I don't actually have a trading plan set up in place for the daily stock talk videos. I've got like half a trading plan and I do some things really consistently in here, but I don't actually have a trading plan. So that needs to be fixed. And so my plan is next week, I'm going to make a trading plan. I'll do a video on it either Monday or Wednesday here on YouTube and do a little stock talk trading plan for my daily videos. And I'll show you guys exactly what a trading plan looks like and how to build one out. So I'm kind of excited about that. Should be kind of cool. But in terms of the interesting trade of the week, this is an interesting one, right? Got an entry, watched it drop, came back up, went actually up pretty well, like, a good part of the way through the trend. And then it pulled back on news. Now it's pulled back even farther, but that may or may not be another good entry. Now, the truth is, since it decided to pull back here instead of run up, we don't really know yet if it's going to be a great entry. I'm still perfectly fine having taken it, right? It's not that big of a deal to have taken this entry, right? I have a couple $100 at risk, not the end of the world, but it's going to be interesting to see, if we get a positive close today, that's going to look like a great entry. If we get a close down here, even below the 20-day, it's going to look like a questionable entry because, the entry candle, it hasn't actually put in another bounce yet. So we'll see what happens. Now, that said, we have bounce here, bounce here, bounce here, bounce here, bounce here, bounce here, but it has come down a little bit since then. So today should be sort of a telling day, and we'll see what happens. And then, of course, going into next week, things can change. So it'll be very interesting to watch this one next week and see what happens with it. So I'm curious to see about that in the daily stock talk videos. Maybe we'll end up with this one up here on YouTube again next week as another interesting trade of the week. That would be kind of fun. So we will see. But nevertheless, interesting trade of the week. And next week, be on the lookout because I am going to be making a daily stock talk videos account trading plan where I show you guys, okay, how do I set up a trading plan? What does it look like? And then how do I actually put processes and systems in my own life in place to make sure that I follow that trading plan. So should be really interesting. Keep an eye out for that video. We'll see you next week. And as always, happy trading, guys.